We are recording. Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Devin. This is Robby Burns. A very big thank you goes out to Robby for being willing to have a conversation with me. And I'll just kind of pick up where we were before we started recording. So Robby is a professional athlete. And correct me if I'm wrong about any of this preamble, Robby, please. You are training to be in the Olympics. That is one of your goals. You are a slalom snowboarder, a professional snowboarder by trade, if we could say that. And the thing that really was the impetus to have this conversation together, and one of the reasons why I'm really inspired to offer what I have in this conversation to you, Robby, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, is what you have shared with your followers on your social media that I've been, privy to as a follower of yours and somebody who's interested in what you're going through. So number one, thank you so much for being here. Number two, thank you everybody for watching, whomever chooses to do so. And then if I could start, I kind of want to put a question to you, Robby, and then kind of give you the floor. If you were going to summarize the biggest struggles that you've had in being a young male professional athlete and managing yourself, and maybe that's a pointed question, but I only put it to you in that way because I think it's a good way to speak to kind of the fortitude that a person has, the wisdom that they've accomplished, accumulated in the struggles that they can then share with folks. So again, kind of what's been the last major kind of story arc in your life? Because when I've been following you, you've been on this journey to qualify for the Olympics. You're obviously an incredibly talented professional athlete. So kind of bring me and whomever is watching up to speed with where we are now in the story, if you like.
Sure. Well, thank you, Devin. Thank you for having me and for providing the question. So I am a U.S. alpine snowboarder. I compete in giant slalom and slalom on the World Cup through the Federation of International Skiing and Snowboarding. So if you wanted to think about that in terms of baseball or basketball or football, the World Cup level is like what we watch on NFL game day on Sunday. These are the top athletes from around the world, between 60 and 90 men, show up to a given race at some place in the world, and you get 2 runs to go as fast as you can through a course and show everyone else in the world what you do or don't have, how good you are. I've been in love with the sport since I was 11 years old, and I'm 30 now, so we're working on 20 years now. I started skiing when I was 2 years old between my mom's legs, and I saw a high school snowboard race happen in Mount Shasta when I was 11 years old. And I watched these 2 snowboarders crest the hill, come down, and I said, I don't know what that is, but I need to do it. I got to figure out how to do that.
That's awesome.
And I spent the last 20 years living a pretty wild and crazy life that took me all over the world, a ton of different experiences that have collectively given me the wisdom I'm super thankful to have today at 30 to make it through those 30 years, really. And so as much as what I'm going to share with you is more so about what I've done in the sport so far over the last 8 years. Now there is a much bigger story to that, and it all is totally interconnected, and I think it's definitely a place to go. But as you said, what's gotten me to where I am now? Graduated college at the University of Idaho in 2012 with a degree in wildland fire ecology and a degree in forest resources. And my first thought was, I need to go get a summer job fighting wildland fire so that I can pay for going snowboarding in the winter. That was like my only goal. My goal was, I love snowboarding. I've wanted to do this my whole life. Because of life decisions before college, I hadn't been able to actively pursue it because it's quite expensive to pursue an Olympic dream in most sports. The money isn't just there. You have to go out and find it. You have to go out and get it. So I started working on a hot shot crew in Northern California, fighting wildland fires for 6 months, where you get unlimited overtime. The only thing you have to do is you got to go work your butt off for 16 hours a day, 14 days straight. And as a young guy, there's nothing wrong with that, you know? Go out in the woods and you work super hard for 14 days, and then you can get 2 days off, do it for a whole summer. Got a bank account full of cash. Couldn't go spend it because I was busy fighting fire all summer. And I started traveling to Steamboat Springs, Colorado in the winters to train. I didn't know if I was any good. Most of the people I was competing and training with were 4, 5, 6 years younger than me, and really talented and really fast. And I'm coming in at 22, and they're all kind of like, "Who's this guy? What's he here for?" And I was like, "I'm here to get really good at this. That's what I want to do." Yeah, so started at
Okay,
the
so
bottom of the
allow me to interrupt you. I apologize. Just, and I don't want to take us off the train of thought of the narrative. So hold your thought if you don't mind. But tell me, because as a skier, I'm just super intrigued and I know you described aesthetically when you saw the slalom racers coming down the hill, and hey, I want to do that. But my question being, what is it about specifically slalom snowboarding that grabbed you?
Sure. So ski racing, super cool. I always was a fan of that. I had wanted to get into that before I saw snowboard racing, but I grew up in a time where snowboarding was really just kind of starting to take off. It had been shunned all over the United States.
Sure.
Ski patrols didn't want it at their ski resorts. Snowboarders were like these horrible people, and it was just starting to get popular on the West Coast in the 90s. And I watched these two guys carving, and they were only carving on one edge. It's like they're doing the same thing the skiers are doing, but they don't have two boards underneath, and they just got this one, and it's icy, and they're just balling down these hills, going as fast as they can. And I was just like, wow, that just has to be fun. Like, I want to feel what I'm watching them do.
That's interesting. I like how you say that. Like whatever this happening there, I want that feeling. That
Yeah,
resonates with me. That's cool. So anyway, I appreciate you answering that question.
definitely. So, yeah, I was ranked like 500th in the United States, like absolute bottom of the list for the people who compete in what I compete in. And I just started working out in the winters doing this. I'd go to the gym, work hard in the gym. And at this time I was 6'3", 160 pounds, just like skin and bones. But I had a dream, and every year just built up a little bit more, got a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, understood my equipment a little bit better. And ultimately we do the same thing day in and day out at training. I mean, you're just running a course over and over again, trying to learn how to do it fundamentally correct. And then once you learn how to do it fundamentally correct, then you start getting faster. And really, like, it sounds so mundane and it sounds so cliche, but it is really building a pyramid from the bottom. And you're looking at it, and if you don't build a good foundation, the next level is going to suck, the next level is going to suck, the next level is going to suck, and then someone's going to finally see it, and they're going to go, it's not what you're working on right here, we got to go all the way back down here, pull out these pieces and work back on this foundation layer, and then we can build it up. And you build, and you build that 10,000 hours of training, that 10,000 hours towards mastery, until you get to the point where you're good enough to win at a given level. And then you win there, and then you get to go to the next level. And it's basically like you start out as the guppy in a small pond. You're in a small pond, and you're the tiniest fish. And as you get better, you become a bigger fish. And then they go and they toss you in a bigger pond. On all of a sudden, you're a small fish again. And so you go through this process of, all right, I'm winning at this level. Now I'm going to go to the next level, and I'm going to go try to win there. Okay, that's really hard. Takes a few years to get there. So I'm 30 now. I started this whole thing when I was 22, so we're 8 years into it, and I went from 500th in the United States to an international ranking last season of 21st in the world.
Wow.
And that process took me all over Western Europe, China, Korea, Russia, I mean, I could name every single country I've been to,
Sure,
but
sure.
when you think about, yeah, so,
And these are World Cup events that you're traveling to predominantly, is that right?
yep. Yeah. So, France, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Slovenia, Czech Republic, South Korea, Moscow, Russia, Magnitogorsk,
Wow.
Russia,
What's your
China,
favorite? Where's your favorite place to race?
Cortina, Italy.
Ooh, Cortina, Italy for the food.
I mean, you can't beat the food, you can't beat the coffee, but the views, the
The
Dolomite Mountains.
views. Okay.
Yeah.
The Dolomites. Can you see the Mediterranean? No.
Nope.
No, you're over on the out. You're looking into France, huh?
No. So from there, you're actually, if anything, you're in this valley, and if you look towards the Alps, you're looking into Austria.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's, I mean, if for no other reason than to have had the opportunity to travel the world, what a beautiful thing in your life that is to explain. I only can speak to it myself because me and my brother were lucky enough that our dad took us on 2 trips to Europe when we were kids. And one, we did a big loop. We flew into Amsterdam and we did a huge, would that be clockwise loop through Europe. Went what, Germany, Austria, I couldn't tell you exactly. Switzerland, you probably know the geography better than me. Switzerland, came back up through France and ended up in Holland again. And yeah, I still haven't skied over there, and that's a big life goal of mine. But just to have had the experience of the other cultures and so forth, huh?
Yeah. I mean, stuff that it's going to take me the rest of my life to unbox, because when you're over there snowboarding and training, we're in one hotel for 4 or 5 days, and then we're moving to another place. We're always looking for the best training on the best snow, and everything's pretty compartmentalized there. You can make it from, one side of Western Europe to the other side in 4 to 6 hours. So we're always moving around, gearing up for the next event, looking for the best training venue that's going to get us quality snow with a reasonable pitch to what we're expecting for the next World Cup race. So it's a
Oh,
lot of
sure.
moving pieces. You're always trying to limit the number of times you're going from the States back to Europe, because every time you change time zones, it's a good week and a half before you're really ready to go.
Right.
So once you're over there, you're trying to stay over there for as long as you can, and also keeping mental, emotional state, physical state, all three of those things in check, because there are unique challenges to living on the road, to living out of a bag, to living in hotel rooms. And so I usually stay over there for like 45 to 60 days is usually about the max that I'll stay over without coming home. Just because at the end of 60 days, I'm usually like, all right, I need something to anchor myself right now.
Sure.
So I'd like that anchor to be going home to visit my parents for Christmas and doing some gym work at home, and then I'll make it over after the new year. But yeah, the professional athlete gig, I wish I could say that it's completely glamorous, but it is not as glamorous as you would imagine it is, just in the fact of, I mean, I've funded my entire career through sponsorship, fundraising, and working as a wildland firefighter.
Sure.
And so I have this dream that I don't want to give up just because of money, just because I don't have the money to go chase it, because I have a dream and I want to chase it. And so I'm not so much complaining, but the reality of it is unless I go out, make the phone calls, make the cold calls, introduce myself, be a brand ambassador for me, nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna care that this young American wants to go to the Olympics and might have a chance at a medal. They won't care unless I go out and tell them, hi, here's who I am and here's what I'm doing.
Sure. Dude, Robby, you're so fun to talk to. I'm a very open person, but I'm also very neurotic. So you get me talking, I won't shut up. That's always the joke I tell somebody when I feel like I'm speaking too much. But the interesting thing about you is you're also very open and you're very accomplished. So instead of just being somebody who's spinning a yarn or trying to pull your leg, you actually have this beautiful story to tell. So there's like 3 or 4 questions I want to ask you just from where we've gotten so far in the story right now. But I want to, before I even start putting interrogatives to you, there's a good word. It's so neat to hear where you're coming from, because there's, you know, as people, we play a social game, right? Like we're always trying to get our serotonin to a certain level, and arguably one of the main ways that neurotransmitter system is leveled is based on our hierarchy in the social order, right? So it's really interesting from my perspective to be around a person who at once is an absolute stud. You're a world class, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I could say the same thing about me with different descriptors, but follow me on this thought. At once, you are the envy of every athlete, save somebody who maybe is in that 14. You know what I mean? Those 14 people who you've got your, you know, who you got their number, right? Because you're shooting for. And so for that reason, it's easy for you to fall into the caricature of saying, or let's say it would be, in my opinion, to fall into the caricature of I'm a professional snowboarder, and so life is easy because I'm a this thing. But you're also intelligent and open enough to be able to articulate, like, hey, like, you guys, like, I'm facing these struggles, and they're very real struggles, and they're not any, I'm not sitting here saying they're any worse than anybody else's, but it's important to understand the whole picture. And for me, that really resonates, because I think what a lot of us do to people that we either don't learn enough from, or for whatever reason are adversarial towards, whether however casually or to whatever deep degree, like say they're members of our family or something, is we often don't understand their full story. We don't see them in all of the nuance that they see themselves. So I really enjoy having conversations with like this with you, man, because you're willing to tell both sides of the story. And I think if as soon as a person's willing to do that, then a real interaction can occur. And I certainly am as well. So don't think I'm trying to put you on the spot, but I just want to tell you, it's so neat to give myself and others access to the highest highs and the highest lows, the truth, the whole thing, because I think that is where it's that surrender to the higher ordering function, like through allowing, I would argue, right? This is all just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, but through you allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you're actually organizing yourself on a higher level, I would argue. And I think that goes for anybody. I think the more that we're willing to express ourselves wholeheartedly and without any sense of, you know, ashamed or abashed defensiveness, there's a weird thing I find that happens where there's nothing to attack, right? Like if I'm not defensive, there's, you know, you go right. I know this is I'm just kind of rambling, but I just want to tell you that it's such a pleasure to be able to I want to say connect with the highest high of you and the lowest low of you, but I think that's pithy. The better way to say it is Nick Caselli, who is the patrol director at Mount Shasta for like a season or two, when I was working there, said something that really resonated with me, and it speaks to the point I'm trying to make. He goes, as a mountain guide and as a ski patrol director, Nick was saying this, I get to be there for people's best days and their worst days. And man, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, that's so beautiful, you know, like maybe he doesn't have as much money as that, you know, Wall Street guy or what have you, or as many accolades as somebody in the academic world, but he gets to see that the, to me, what speaks as he gets to see what's real in a person's experience of the environment, whether it's when they break themselves skiing and you know, the ski patrol picks them up, or they get to have their highest height. They just summited a mountain that they never thought they could, right? So why do I bring that to bear on the discussion that we're having? Because you are at once expressing the reality that you are to be praised for good reason, because you've worked extremely hard, obviously, for 8 years at a very specific goal and have made all the sacrifices for that. But you're also willing to volunteer the fact that, like, hey, like, stuff sucks, and like I'm having a hard time with raising money or stuff. So for me, as a neurotic, you know, thinker, I really value people who are willing to put it on the line. Okay. And you're doing that. So good on you. So now here's my questions for you, Robby. the first one that I think will guide the main narrative, but I also want to get into kind of a side story because it's where I feel like I can add some value, because I can't tell you the first friggin' thing about slalom snowboarding, for God's sakes. I taught slalom skiing, interestingly enough, one year last year, just super randomly. I never ski raced ever, not once in my life, but I could ski fast. I've just skied forever. My top speed's like 60, maybe 60 plus. Um, but what I could speak to is some of that interpersonal or intrapersonal, like individual struggle with kind of getting oneself together. So my question for you, right, is, as number 15 now internationally, which is what you said, what's
Right now it's hard to say exactly where I'm at. Like today, a new list will come out July 1st. I'm probably sitting between 21st and 35th, somewhere in there.
okay. So my question becomes, what's the plan of action for making that a smaller number, right? That's kind of my first thing, because that's obviously your professional goal, I would venture to say. But then kind of B and C is where I want to start digging in, is, how you doing? How has that been on you psychologically, cognitively, emotionally, in terms of your relationships? Like, I'm super interested because I haven't gone on that journey. You feel me? Like, I've had a narrative arc that is much different from yours, and so to hear the less glamorous struggles that lifestyle has presented, which you already kind of touched on and just scratched the surface of, but I would guess that you know the pain goes much deeper, if I can say so. And again, I the last thing I want to do is put you on the spot or make you feel like I'm coming from like a judgmental place, because I can tell you about my own shit, but I just feel like your story is very interesting. So I kind of wanted to put those two questions to you. A, where you're at now, what's the plan to get to number one, right? Because if you're not in it to get to number one, don't even talk to me, right? Like, that's what it's about. Am I wrong? And then B, how you doing? How has this weighed on you? And I only come at you like that because, for full disclosure, you have said things on social media where that speak to the idea that some of this has been hard on you. Is that a fair place to stop and put those two questions to you?
For sure. Yeah. No, and it doesn't feel like an attack at all. I think it's a really valid question. I think it's a question that, in my time, I've gotten opportunities to journey into my story through public speaking. Local high schools around the surrounding area in Ssris County have said, "Hey, we'd like you to come talk to our class." And I've gotten an opportunity to talk to seniors in high school and let them know, my story, where I came from, what happened to make my trajectory such as it was. And so I think about two things when you ask those questions. The first one I think about is trajectory. And the second one I think about is, there's kind of a macro scale to all of this, and there's a micro scale. There's what's happening in my life right now that's super challenging, that's super overwhelming. And I think that's something that is intrinsically tied to being a human. It's not intrinsically tied to being a professional athlete. We all have these ebbs and flows and these circumstances that come up that arise where, like, holy cow, life's really overwhelming right now. It's throwing a lot at me. I feel like I'm in a deep, dark corner. I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know who to talk about it with, and I'm overwhelmed. And so that's, on a very specific scale, I can shed some light on that.
I mean, dude, can I just interject really quick?
Yeah.
That's an extraordinarily empowering phrase to utter, if you can do so honestly. Just what you said is I would argue an extraordinarily empowering place to start from, because to even acknowledge the things that can torment the self is to define them and then be able to work at. As an athlete, you obviously know the process to forming a goal, creating a strategy to execute that goal, and then working every fucking day, trying to work however infinitesimally small towards that goal. So I just wanted to give you props on being able to say, like, I'll paraphrase, like, man, stuff in my life is overwhelming me. It's very difficult. It's got me feeling some kind of way, and here I am, and I don't know what to do about it, and I don't know even how to really effectively articulate it. And I mean, this is coming from my mouth. That was a paraphrase of where you're coming from, but for me, I don't want to make fucking people feel bad or like I'm coming at them wrong by even trying to articulate. So am I even shooting myself in the foot trying to describe what I'm going through? Am I even justified in the suffering that I'm feeling? Like, have I been so privileged in my life that I don't have the right to feel? I'll go super neurotic with it. So I think the way that you just spoke to the struggles that everybody has at some point in their life, or they're just deluded to the point of being Rapunzel in her tower, right? To be able to speak to those kinds of things in the way that you did, I think is an incredibly self-aware thing. So good on you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. So yeah, so you got that micro level, what's going on right here, and you also have the macro level, which is where are you at in your process, where are you at in the seasons of life, and where are you trying to go. So the last 2 months since snowboard season ended, I've been getting that question a lot. Everyone wants to know, so what's next? Like, what's the plan? Where are you going? Where are you headed? And there's a duality to the micro and the macro. Everybody wants to know where you're headed, and you're overwhelmed by where you're at. And so you're sitting in this space and you're like overcome with this, okay, I don't know the answer to the questions that everybody wants answers to, but here's what I can do. I'm going to put a date out there in the future. And that date for me for the last 2 months has been June 15th, which, as we both know, is right around the corner, which was going to be kind of like my go or no go for my gym preparation for next season. Because if I start by June 15th, that gives me 3 full months of a really strong physical preparation, cardiovascular preparation, and then I still have 2 months to tweak anything I need to.
What do you do for your cardio, out of curiosity, for slalom snowboarding? Are you doing a lot of biking? Are you swimming? Are you running? All of the above? Do you do indoor stuff?
For sure, a combination of all three.
Okay.
Only those three. So I'm either
right?
swimming or I'm on a bike.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I preferred the bike. And actually, over time, I've gotten more accustomed to running. Swimming is still my least favorite form of cardio, but I get most of what I need cardiovascularly out of running and biking, with a combination of, gosh, I'm blanking on it, HIIT and LIS.
Okay, sure. HIIT, high intensity interval training. And what
then
is
LIS would be low intensity steady state.
Oh, okay.
So that's
okay,
like
that's interesting.
minutes on the treadmill, running,
Sure.
like
Elliptical.
Just
okay.
Heart rate sitting at 135 beats per minute, and it's just focusing on
Sure.
that base so that I can always get there.
Do you use the elliptical?
I don't.
You don't? That's my favorite. I fucking love the elliptical.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you do the treadmill for those long, set that what, yellow level or what have you, where you can idle there and stay there, and you can get back to that heart rate pretty quick, when you're recovering. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Right. Do you do breathing training? Do you do breath work?
So I mean, I do incorporate meditation, and I've read several books on breathing. One of my favorite ones is called The Art of Breath by James Nestor, and it's just a spectacular book if you're ever curious about breathing. I have mild sleep apnea that I've dealt with my whole life, and the book turned me on to putting a small piece of surgical tape over my lips at night. Which keeps my mouth shut.
Okay, you don't wear a CPAP or a BiPAP. You do the tape thing.
Just keep my mouth shut with a piece of tape, and then I breathe through my nose, and it takes care of my sleep apnea pretty well.
You ever done? I'm sure you do. I bet you the answer to this is yes. Do you do cold baths, cold showers, cryotherapy, ice baths?
Yep.
All the above.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Wim Hof?
Sure. Yeah. I took Isabella to one of his events in San Jose. Bro, it was a little bit culty. Sure. And the thing that I love about where he comes from is he will be the first to tell you that it's a technique. It's not a person. It's a practice. He happens to have invested himself in it. But bro, do you know the story of his coming to that wisdom? I'm that guy. I always feel it necessary to tell this part of the story. I'm sorry.
Is his upbringing.
No, his wife.
So as far as I'm at in his book is he's talked about his upbringing so far, and I can't even remember it verbatim. But what about his
Okay,
wife?
but he hasn't talked about his wife yet. But you're currently. I mean, I won't wreck it for you if you don't want me to, but I'll tell you if you want to hear.
Yeah, sure.
Dude, his wife, love of his life by all accounts, many children together, soulmates, wonderful relationship, so on and so forth. Suffered from multiple personality schizophrenia and suicided off of a 10-story building. And it was after that experience of trying to make sense of that tragedy in his life that I can't speak for the man, but he went into the cold, right? And learned how to endure it and learned how purifying it was and found his ability to endure it to be health, renewing of his health. So anytime everybody brings up Wim Hof, that's always my ace in the hole. I'm like, how he became Wim Hof? And they're like, what are you talking about? So I love that because again, it's making that same point of we can talk about the highest highs. We can talk about your performance as a snowboarder for hours and hours and for good reason. Lord knows you've worked hard enough to have that be a legitimate endeavor. I just happen to be not at all interested in snowboarding because I suck at snowboarding and I'm pretty okay at skiing. So while I appreciate and respect what you've done, I can only appreciate it from the recognition of the rarefied atmosphere that you are in terms of your competitive stance versus the other athletes in your discipline. I don't really have anything intelligent to say about your specific discipline, you see. But what I do think is super neat is talking about the other side. What gives you that fire to get on that? You feel what I'm saying? What was that experience that gave you, and how do you like, if we're going to just talk about it in the now as opposed to just in the past, in what way do you relate to that thing, if you like, that can be made to be a positive motivator moving forward for the incredible mountain that you would still have to climb to become number one, right? I think that's a fundamental question. And that's why I like to put it to you like that. It's like, what trauma keeps you going, or what trauma needs to be fully or most fully reworked such that you have what you need moving forward? You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to ask the question in a way that you could ask it to anybody, but does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, there's like the longhand version to that, to answer that question, which to me is the more powerful one. It would be one thing for me to tell you like, all right, well, here's where I'm at today, and here are the things I struggle with. But when you look at it on the scale of my entire life, from where I started to where I'm now, condensing that into a short enough story that you can hear it all and grasp kind of like the craziness of all of it.
Well, I mean, dude, I got time, and number two, you can't out crazy me, dude. I try. Trust me, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you halfway. So first of all, don't censor yourself for the idea of trying to seem sane. That's a fucking waste of your time, in my opinion. And number two, please lay it on me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me the whole story.
I keep moving around because I figured I'd make some tea if I'm actually gonna
do your thing, dude. I've got tea right here, and you know what one of my favorite things to do is with tea? I've already done it with this cup, so I can't do it. I could do it again, but it's not hot enough. Have you ever heard of a stroopwafel?
A stroopwafel?
Yes. Is that how you say it? Stroopwafel? You put them on top of your tea? You know what I'm talking about?
I've never done
that. And then they melt. They don't melt all the way into the liquid. They just heat up such that now the little wafer of like crispy waffle cracker and caramel filling is warm and saturated and hot.
Okay.
Or soft to they're fucking delicious, dude.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of them. I've never done the warming thing, but I've had them, I guess, unintentionally warmed. Maybe not from a drink, but they are good.
Delicious. Yeah, tell me. I'm
So
interested because like let me just jump because that's the kind of guy I am. I have a thought, I want to share it. Now it doesn't seem as important as what you're gonna say. I just am really honored to have these discussions with people because I think that the best thing that we can do for people willing to listen to us is share the stuff that's most difficult to share.
Sure.
That almost seems like by definition, right? If something's easy for me to give to you, then it's probably not that valuable. But if something's really difficult for me to dig up and synthesize into coherent
Yep.
thought and articulate effectively and share in a fair and digestible way, well, then that's probably worth something. So yeah, there you go. So give it to me. That was my digress into wanting
There
to
you go.
hear the story, man. Can you hear me? Oh, I hear just a little blip of you. We had a unstable connection there. I think we were getting too powerful for the internet, for the interwebs. Let me see. I'm going to pause it on this computer. Recording in progress. All right, and we are back. And I will give the floor to you, Robby. I feel like we were just about to, hear where you're coming from. So please, Sage now wants some attention. But lay it on us. Let's hear it.
Cool, man. Well, everyone already knows my name, Robby Burns. I'm from Mount Shasta, California. Born and raised here. Born into a Christian conservative Republican household, and went to church every Sunday. Lived a pretty strict lifestyle. Didn't go out. There was pretty much just good influence around me from a very young age. I got the opportunity to all the sports I wanted to do, so I could, if I wanted to engage in any sport, I could engage in it.
Do you have any
And
siblings?
I did, yeah. Brother and a sister, both older. My brother was the oldest. Sister was the middle child. I was the youngest. Always looked up to both of them, and always wanted to be as good as they were at sports, and just as educated and smart and talented as they were. So had a lot of really good role models in my life. All my extended family lived within like a 20-mile radius. Life was pretty simple growing up. Parents took care of most of the things. I had chores. If I did my chores, did my schoolwork, then life was easy. Life was simple. So very privileged in that sense. Right around the time when I started snowboarding, and right around the time when I found racing and said that's what I want to do, I was going through some pretty challenging stuff in my life that nobody knew about.
So just real quick, so I know where we are in the story. You started competitive racing 8 years ago, but when,
Yep.
of course, did you start snowboarding? Must have been when you were really young.
I started snowboarding when I was 9.
Okay.
I was 9 years old when I started snowboarding. I was 11 when I saw my first race. So I had been doing it for a few years, and I was, completely enamored with snowboarding, and I wanted to make my whole life about it. There was another young man from Mount Shasta who was doing what I wanted to be doing. He was already going professional in alpine snowboarding. He was born and raised in Mount Shasta, and he was doing the whole thing. So I got to watch that, through the newspaper, through some online.
And who is that? We should give that person a shout out.
Yeah, his name's Zach K.
Right on.
Yep.
Props
Local
to
kid.
Zach K.
So
Cool.
looking up to him, wanted to do what he was doing, wanted to go to the Olympics. He was on his way to the Olympics. Sidebar, he never made it, but he got really close. But that was one of my huge inspirations growing up. So here you got little old Robby, 11-year-old, loves snowboarding, lives in a Christian Republican home. Little did anybody around me know, while living that kind of charmed white privileged life, behind the scenes in a dark place, I was being abused sexually by an older male in my life. And so that was occurring, and absolutely nobody knew. And part of the way that I was raised was, you only do good. We're not supposed to be bad. We're not supposed to do anything wrong. And so I pretty much told myself, when that occurred over the course of a year, I said, I'm never going to tell anybody about this, because It would ruin me. It would ruin my family. It would ruin everything. And so I chose to put that one behind me and say, all right, that's that. I'm never going to talk about this ever.
What a terrible responsibility to have to put on somebody's shoulders. The idea that you've now been given this unbelievably destructive force and you are asked to manage it, and it's something you didn't ask for. It's something you certainly didn't seek out, and yet now it's your responsibility. That is just it's a terrible thing to hear.
Yeah, well, definitely. I appreciate that, Devin. So I went on living my life, and pretty much what was important to me was that I really needed to keep my grades up. Now I needed to be a really good performer. I needed to be good in school, in athletics, because if I'm not, someone will know something's wrong. And so I always felt like something was wrong with me. I just couldn't let anybody else know there was something wrong. And yeah, navigating life and trying to be a successful young male in society while carrying that in my back pocket was extremely challenging. And
I have to ask you this. I apologize to interject, but I'm sure it was challenging. How did your brain trick you into thinking that this was something that was wrong with you? What was the self-talk that resulted in the conclusion that you had done? Was it the way that my brain runs with it is the idea that when any trauma is so proximate, nothing makes sense. But as time goes on, I wonder if there was some sort of complex where you feel like you do need to talk, you do need to come clean, you do need to make this thing right. But at the very same time, you're balancing that with what we've just kind of described as this extraordinary, you're holding an atom bomb in your other hand, where you feel like you might have the potential to do destructive harm to the family and all these things. So you feel responsible for that. But then of course you probably got your conscience saying, I got to make this thing right. So I guess that makes perfect sense to me psychologically. What doesn't make sense to me is how the brain has parlayed that into something's wrong with me.
I think that's a really interesting question that I can probably shed some light on. It's like without going into like descriptive.
Yeah, no, I
details,
understand.
There's one specific instance towards the end of this whole abuse occurring, where I had a come to Jesus moment, and I was like, hey, I think this is really wrong, what's happening, and I think I need to tell someone about it. And I got strangled and shoved up against a wall, and the person put the fear of God in me and said, look, if you ever tell anybody about what happened, I'll kill you. And I looked at them and I believed them. I believed them with my whole heart that if I told someone, I was going to get killed. And as a 12-year-old, like, there was nothing more serious than that to me. It was like, okay, this is real. I can't tell anybody about this or I'm going to die. And as I got older, I realized that like I absolutely needed validation from everybody around me in my life. I needed people to tell me that I was okay. I needed people to tell me that I was good because I didn't feel good inside. I felt horrible. And so by going the extra mile, by trying insanely hard to accomplish things, it helped me feel more okay. It helped me feel more in tune with life. Like, okay, I'm still killing it at life. So even though that messed up stuff happened, I'm still doing good. So we're good, right? And I thought for a long time that was just how life was going to go. I was just going to keep on fighting as hard as I could, and it wasn't going to catch up to me. And that was until, like halfway through. No, it was the summer in between my freshman and sophomore years of high school. A friend invited me over to his house for an Xbox party. Like, I'm not even a video game guy, but he was like, hey, come over play X Games with us and the guys. We're going to play Halo and have fun. It's like, all right. Pulls out a bottle of booze and says, hey, you want to try this out?
I just have to say, because this is hilarious. As a extreme sport athlete, you just called an Xbox an X Games. And that is something that only a fucking X Games proximal athlete would do, who has no understanding of gaming. So I just want to put that to you. I have an Xbox and it is right over there and it's very fun, but I digress. So you went and had the X Games with the people, and he pulls out alcohol.
Went to
you
play
say.
the play box with the X Games, and
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
and the kid ended up having drinks, and we drank, and it was like an immediate release from like that inner voice that had been kind of cultivating itself for a
Oh,
long time,
no.
which you can
You
call your
found
conscience.
something
For me,
that worked, huh?
yeah, I found something that worked, and so that was my new secret. My new secret was I found something that worked, and I need to keep that secret.
Sure.
And tried to keep that secret through the rest of my high school career, and that drove me into a deep dark corner of
Oh,
trying to
man.
keep that secret.
Sure. Sure.
And between several arrests, I got put in juvenile hall,
Just from
and
the drinking, huh?
yeah,
The drinking
only
kind of manifested these scenarios where
just
even
came
though
out
you're a
sideways
top
through it.
level athlete, you
Yep.
just you're drunk as a skunk and something happens or whatever. I'm sorry, but I feel where you're coming from. Go ahead. My bad. My bad.
Oh, you're good, man. No, it's a conversation. It's not just a story. Um, yeah, so got in enough trouble fast enough. It was like all happening so fast. My senior year of high school that they put me in juvenile. They said, "All right, you're gonna get one more chance. Don't screw up." Um, and at that time, I had the wild and crazy idea of running away to Mexico
That is a crazy
to
idea.
start my life over. Like I was like,
Sure.
screw this. I'm gonna go figure out how to live in Mexico. I'm gonna go
Tell
down there.
tell me there was at least a thought about surfing. You were going to surf in
The
Mexico,
goal
right?
was to start a surf school.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
all I wanted to hear. I'm sorry. That's all I needed. Now
So-
it makes sense. Okay. Gotcha.
Ran away to Mexico with the hope and dream of starting this surf school. Got into trouble down there. Ended up needing to call home. Called home, said I screwed up. Parents come down, pick me up, and the next day I get sent to wilderness therapy, which is like it's
Okay.
like a
Outward
wilderness
bound or something.
rehabilitation type thing where you go out in the woods for an extended period of time, and you work on your shit, and you're away from any substances or any people. So you just out in the middle of nowhere on Sandy M Pass,
Yeah.
10 feet of snow in the middle of winter
Yeah.
with therapists, licensed therapists, and you're out there and you dig holes in the snow and you sleep at night and you hike during the day and talk about your feelings and write about what's going on. And
So good experience or cynicism remains.
epic experience.
Epic
It was
experience.
amazing. It was really hard, but it was amazing.
Yep.
Did really well in that. Parents brought me back to Mount Shasta halfway through the program because they wanted me to graduate with my class.
Awesome.
I came back, fell flat on my face, got arrested again. And at that point, I became a ward of the state. And so I was either going to go to a sheriff's run dude camp for 2 years, or my parents elected to give me the opportunity to go to a boarding school. School.
Yeah.
And I luckily chose the boarding school. So I went and did a 12-month therapy-based boarding school in northern Idaho, where I, spent 12 months free and clear of alcohol, drugs, anything like that, and graduated with a high school diploma and moved on with my life. And I learned a lot. It was 12 months of like really intense self-work.
Yeah.
Like pulling out
a lot of writing. Are you writing a lot?
Tons
Are you
of writing.
journaling? Are you writing your thoughts? Are you coming up with
and then sharing them.
insights?
Yeah. And
Oh,
then
it's mandatory. Understood.
Oh no, it's all mandatory. It's like you share
sure.
you share something and then that's what they use to help you. So like once you share it, then they
Then it's
gear
out.
questions
Yeah.
that are tailored towards what you're hurting or what you're working on.
Was there a fair bit of affirmation, or was like what percentage, consternation versus what percentage, whatever the first word I said was affirmation was it? Would you say, just out of curiosity?
I think the whole program was really geared to work in a direction. So it wasn't like you're a bad person and you're here all because of the choices you made. It was like you're a really wonderful person who's made poor choices, and we need to work through why you're making those poor choices so that we can get you to a better spot where you choose better choices in the future. We're not here to change you. We don't want to like brainwash you. We just want you to look at why you came here, why you got to this point, and work through whatever that is so that we can send you off and you can go live your life.
Sure. Like, is the person that finds themselves at said school capable of competent self-reflection, right? That's got to be a starting point. Like, what's going on? If a person can tell you, then good on them, right? Then they're obviously aware enough to find themselves on the map and they can move forward, right? Conceptually. But I imagine one of the things that kind of program would run into a non-trivial amount of time is the person that is just delusional, or the person that is self-destructive in a way that they're not maybe aware of, you know? Like, that's probably got to be the meat and potatoes of the most difficult work. You're probably a treat to work with in a place like that, or you know, how do you say it? Like, you probably got more out of that experience than the next guy, statistically speaking, given the fact that you are an incredibly driven athlete. I mean, don't sell yourself short. You're probably the top 3, 2, maybe, I mean, shit, probably 1 percentile of all athletes in the world, irrespective of discipline. So bringing that to bear on this stuff that you're describing, I'm sure, however much you showed it or not, consciously or unconsciously, played in your favor, right?
I think it definitely helped me. It helped me to latch onto the program. It helped me to latch on to, to drink the Kool-Aid is what it helped me do.
Sure.
Because it was like,
because you're like, it's not going to kill me. I could take it. Let's do it, right?
yeah, and to feel like, to actually, I mean, I gotta say this, and I'll probably say it more times than once. I know I've said privilege a couple of times, but like, how many people right now are out there somewhere in the world with the same or similar talents, abilities that are uncovered? They're hidden, they're inside,
right.
but they have a body that can do a lot. They have a mind that can do a lot, and they're literally out there in the world struggling and falling flat on their face because they never got an opportunity to do something different.
Sure.
And like, I think about it like that, and it's not just terms of race, like not just terms of color, but like, I wonder how many people are similar to me in the fact that they had this ability or this innate talent or this drive to go do something, but when they made the mistake, when they got sent to jail, when they got sent, they didn't get the opportunity that I had. And so while I was there those first few weeks, and I was really soaking in that I was going to be there for a year, which sucked. And that first few weeks I was pissed. I was a angry little boy. I was like, this is bullshit. I shouldn't be here. I deserve to go live my life. I want to go live my life. And then you have all these people around you going, yeah, but how is that actually working out for you? Like,
yeah. Let's take stock of that situation.
Let's actually, like, do you want to be realistic about this and look at where you're going?
Yeah, I hear you.
And so having those people really look me in the eye and tell me like, hey, your shit actually does stink. Merry Christmas. You need to look at it and smell it. And now we're going to sort through all of it.
Yeah.
That was eye-opening. And so, again, like, there's details that I'm leaving out because let's just
I hear you.
The bulk of it, and then if time comes up, we'll let more come out. But
okay,
I made it through this year, and I really felt like, wow, you know what? I just did a lot of work. I'm fixed. Like, I'm good to go for the rest of my life.
Yeah, done. Check.
Yep. Went to college. Made it 4 years through college. Working hard in school, partying hard on the weekends.
Still drinking. Like, drinking is still your chosen poison. You're still a drinker.
My thing.
At this point.
I'm not a pot smoker. I'm not into hard drugs. I don't do.
What are you drinking? What's your drink? What do you go buy a 12er, a Natty Light, or are you sophisticated? You got your whiskey, or you got a beer that you like, or what did drinking look like? Out of curiosity.
Back then.
Yeah.
Back then it was. I mean, it's college, so it was whatever's cheapest. So it was usually like Coors Light. And as I got older, my taste transitioned to those seltzer waters because they're
like, those have become really popular, haven't they? Yeah.
There's no extra sugar in them. They're 100 calories, and it's like, if I'm gonna drink and still work my butt off in the gym, that's what I'm gonna drink.
Sure.
So I made it through college, kind of like felt like, okay, this is the first time I've ever actually been on my own. I've proven to myself and to everyone around me that I'm capable of getting 2 college degrees while living my life, while still partying, which was always something I was pretty insecure about because it sent me in such a bad way when I was a kid that I figured if anybody else knew, like, oh, he parties on the weekends, I figured they'd think that my life was just gonna like fall into the shit again,
Hmm.
like the way they did when I was a kid. Part I did leave out that's important is while I was at boarding school, it was the first time that I shared about the abuse.
Okay. Okay.
And I eventually shared that with the whole school, eventually shared it with my family, which opened up a lot of room for healing for me and for my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, so I made it through college. You already know what happened next. I got really clear that I wanted to go snowboard and I wanted
Right.
to just like endeavor my life and getting as good at that as I possibly could, with the
Right.
goal of going to the Olympics, with the goal of winning World Cup medals.
Right.
You know, obviously, you said this at the beginning. You said if you're not doing it to get first, then why are you doing it at all? And I think
Right.
there's two important pieces to that. One, absolutely, I want to be the best in the world. But two, I don't believe that winning a gold medal is the goal. And
Okay.
the reason I say that is I know a lot of people who have gone to the Olympics, who have won gold medals, who have done a lot of successful things with their career. And they'll all share with you something similar of saying, like, yeah, man, I finally won that gold medal. And then 2 weeks later, I didn't know what the hell to do with my life.
Right. Right. That's a
I
common
didn't
thing
know who I
for
was.
super high performers. They climb that mountain and then what's the point? You know, Tyson Fury is?
I don't.
Tyson Fury is the current heavyweight boxing champion of the world. You know, there's so many belts in boxing, but he's at least got one or two of the most important ones, let's say. Um, he beat Klitschko like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Huge underdog coming up. They call him the Gypsy King. He's enormous. He's like 6'9", 6'10", big white Pika gypsy from England. Really super open, sweet guy. Talks about his stories. Is a self-proclaimed gypsy because I understand that that can be construed as a derogatory term. But again, he calls himself the Gypsy King. That's his name. In any case, he beat Klitschko. Right? Beautiful display of boxing. You know, and then he gained 300 pounds. Got suicidally depressed. I mean, this is a guy who can carry 400 pounds, right? Um, and tells of the story of he was in his Ferrari, right? I mean, he's the fucking he's the king of the world, right? He got sponsorship deals, he's got money coming in, he's not got a lot of overhead, you know what I'm saying? He's living the life, women, drugs, you name it, whatever you want, right? And he tells the story of driving his whatever the fuck he was driving 200 some odd miles an hour towards a bridge and just like, all right, like here I go, and then something kind of helped him back, and then subsequently the rest is history. He found a rival in Deontay Wilder, unbelievably spectacular athlete, super long, tall. He's only like 6'5", but the build on this guy, he has this overhand right that just demolishes anybody. He had like 50 knockouts, like to the tune of looking like Tyson in his prime, of different builds, but just had this atom bomb of a right hand. So Fury wants to challenge for the title, has a purpose again. They can unify the belts because this other Deontay Wilder has some belts, right? And Deontay Wilder hits him with the right hand and he goes out. It's like the fucking 12th round, final round. And I mean, it's done. He's boxed unbelievably beautifully. They've gone toe to toe. The story is, he went the distance with the destroyer, and he's laying on the mat, and it's like to an 8 count. And like Lazarus, he just gets up. Everybody's just like, what? And he won the rest of the round. He outboxed Deontay the rest of the round. And then he comes back and they give him a rematch because he realizes Deontay doesn't fight his gut on his back leg. He's this nuker when he's planted, and he's so athletic, even though he's not as heavy. So Wilder goes in to take him out for the second fight and just destroys him in the second fight. So here's a guy who I mean, I don't mean to ramble as a side, like you were saying, a side note, but I just think that there's so many stories like that, and they're the most interesting ones, right? Like the people that do the best. I mean, the toughest guy in the world with boxing gloves on can just lose any real motivation and balloon up 300 pounds and want to kill himself. So I love to hear stories like that, not because I have any great pleasure in the suffering of others, but to hear that the people that are the greatest champions are equally, if not more deeply human in the depths to which they suffer from the human experience. So I just want to share that story with you and give you the floor back.
Thanks for sharing. No, I appreciate those stories anytime I come up to toes with them. Like year to year, funding has always been a challenge. I had in 2019, I didn't have any funding, so this was after the 2018 Olympic run. I ran to the 2018 Olympics, finished runner up, so I didn't get to go, and I trained right alongside one of my best buddies the whole season, and it was either going to be he or I who went to the Olympics. And so we just we were running and gunning together, working as hard as we could, and he got the nod and I didn't.
Oh,
Um, and so at the end of that Olympic cycle, that was 4 years of my life that I had put in. Granted, it was the first 4 years I had really seriously gone after this,
right.
but I put everything into it because I believed it was possible. Everyone else would have told you, they told me during the run up to the Olympics, they were like, there's no way in hell that you start seriously doing this and in 4 years you go to the Olympics. And I was like, screw that, you guys are wrong.
Yep.
And I got literally as close as you can get to going without going. And everyone was like, holy shit, dude. Like, nice. Like that was epic. That was so fun to watch. It was so fun to experience what you just did over the last 4 years. And the people who had done it before, who had done an Olympic cycle, they started reaching out of the woodwork and they were like, hey man, just want to let you know Olympic blues is a real thing. Like whether you go or you don't go, you just spent the last 4 years of your life endeavored in trying to go. You're going to get the Olympic blues. You're going to have a come down off this. It's going to suck. Here's my number. If you need to talk, reach out.
Oh, nice.
And I was like super thankful for all of that. And the Olympic blues was for sure a real thing. 2.5, 3 months after that season, I was just wrecked. But at the end of those 2.5, 3 months, I got back in the gym, started working hard. Didn't have any funding going into the next season, but I said, screw it, I still want to train because I want to go to the next Olympics. So I went back to Steamboat Springs and I took a security job at Steamboat Ski Resort, working graveyard shift from 11:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. 5 nights a week. And then I'd go home, eat some food, go to training, come back, eat some food, go to sleep, go back to work, rest, repeat, rest, repeat. Had my best result at World Championships to date of my career while carrying that schedule. I got
Kidding.
I got 14th place in World Championships in Salt Lake City, Utah, and like I was like, holy cow, that was crazy. That was awesome. That's the best I've ever done in a world class event. And that got me, some motivation and some notoriety. And the next summer, I was like, I still don't know how I'm going to fund this next year, but I want to do it. So I just started putting together a fundraiser. I had no idea how to put together a fundraiser, but I was like, I'm going to put a fundraiser on in my hometown, ask people for support so I can go out and I can do this next season so that I can keep the dream alive. Like I got 14th at a race. I can go to the Olympics if I just keep on working and keep on trying. So kept working hard in the gym, kept focused during the summer, working full time for the Forest Service.
Okay, I was going to ask you same job, but no, you're working for the Forest Service at this point. Is it fire that you're doing for the Forest
At
Service?
this point, I'm doing forestry work for the Forest Service.
Okay.
But for the most part, I did fire work for them. Throw the fundraiser, it goes wildly successfully. Like it was just a really cool night. Made what I needed to make the season happen. And then on top of that, I went and I coached elite youth athletes in my sport full time in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I did this so that I could make some more money, so that I could continue to fund going over to Europe to do World Cup events. I only competed in 5 World Cup events in that season, and I finished 13th, 10th, and 4th in 3 of them.
Wow. Fantastic.
And it was like this. So I got 13th, and then
Yeah.
I got 10th, and then I got 4th. And I
Wow.
only competed in 5 events, and it was like, all right, here we go. We got some real traction. We got a bunch of people that believe in us. Like, let's just keep working our butt off and going for it. Then COVID hit.
Right.
I elected to stay in Vail, Colorado, because I had gotten into a relationship back in November before the season started with a really special girl, and I had this feeling. I was like, this is a really special one, and I think I should try my best to nurture this relationship. And then when COVID hit, I made it to Colorado, driving back to California from Minnesota. And for so many different reasons, it was just smarter to stay where I was at in Colorado.
Okay.
So I elected to stay in Colorado for the summer, took a random job landscaping, got a house, and COVID kind of just put everything in the air. It was like, all right, well, can't work out in the gym because the gyms aren't open. So I'm going to run, and I'm going to do my push-ups and my sit-ups and my calisthenics. But I have no clue what's around the corner. And took all the way up until like the middle of October to really figure out, like, okay, they're actually going to have a World Cup snowboard season. I can go back to Europe and compete again. Now I got to figure out how to make all that happen. Got in touch with some sponsors, got in touch with some donors, came together with a budget for the season, and went over to Europe, really, really anticipating a successful season.
Yeah, you just came off these 3 tremendous World Cup. Is that what you say? You say it's called the World Cup? World Cup finishes. I mean, why wouldn't you come in just full of justified confidence,
fire, and motivation?
Sure.
So we're getting pretty close to the end of this thing, but I got to backstep for just a minute. That summer through COVID was extremely challenging for me. It was extremely challenging to just live. I mean, like, I was really struggling just to live. I was struggling to get out of bed in the morning, and for the life of me, I didn't want to blame it on COVID, because I still don't really think it was COVID. I think, there was, this overwhelming depression that had been a part of my experience for, the better part of 20 years, like since I had gone through the abuse.
So is it fair to say that wherever the drinking was happening, there was that underlying feeling that you're speaking to right now? Is that right?
I would definitely say that the drinking's tied to it. And the hard part about that is that I've never been like a consistent drinker. Like I'm not someone who wants to just like drink beers every night. I like to go work really, really hard for a month or a month and a half. And then I like to have a weekend where I can just go get drunk.
Sure.
But yeah, for sure. I mean, it's followed me everywhere the drinking's gone. And I'm still working on it to this day, of like figuring out how to live without alcohol. It's really, really exceptionally hard for me, even as a professional athlete, even with all the time I spend in the gym. Living without alcohol completely is really challenging for me.
I hear you. I have a good song for you. I'll send you the link.
Cool. I'd love to hear it. So yeah, went into this last season still, I was in good shape, had the money side taken care of. So I was going in fully anticipating being successful on the World Cup. And every single race all season long, I was finishing between 25th and 35th on the World Cup. And
I mean,
that, to me,
statistically, that's not too far down the things, but I can see how jarring that is from a third place finish.
Yeah, from a third or a fourth or 10th or 13th or
14th, right?
I
hear you.
So for me, like, the first race happened and I got like 27th. It was like, all right, that's okay. I'll come and I'll get it next race. That race happens 27th. And it's really challenging when you're over there and you're expecting one thing and you get another thing race after race.
Sure.
It's like the best way I can explain it is like if you had a win-loss column as a professional football team and you went out and you lost all 12 games of the regular season.
I hear you.
So it felt like it was just a losing season. And
Bro, I mean, let me interject because I think that I understand more fully than I would argue you give me credit. So in this particular instance, because I think it's even worse of a problem than you described. So I just sent you and I'll tell you why I think that. I just sent you a song. It's called the Drinking Song, but it's of course not a song to drink to. It's a creation of this guy Akira the Don, who I'm a big fan of, who makes really meaningful music, and he calls it Meaning Wave. And so he has all these different albums of different speakers whose prose he puts on top of an underlying electronic song. And so there's Goggins Wave, which is an album of the sayings of David Goggins, who's a very, I'm sure, okay, yeah, I love listening to him, and that's really fun to listen to. There's a Jocko Wave, there's a Rogan Wave, there's a Peterson Wave, which is what I'm trying to speak to now, and several others, Alan Watts, Terrence McKenna, some really fun people to listen to. Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist. I've listened to him a lot.
he's
the
amazing.
drinking stuff, you've read some of his stuff or listened to him, it sounds like. And so yeah, he's a fun person to glean well articulated, deeply thought out wisdom from, and because he's able to put it out there in a tangible and coherent form. And so this song talks about why getting over drinking is so difficult, because drinking's a hell of a drug, you know. And he goes, to get over drinking, you have to find something better. Like you can't just give it up. Like you have to sacrifice it at the altar of something that is inherently better than it. It's like, well, what's better than all your anxieties, all your negative, depressive feelings, all that shit gone, more extroverted social energy, less neuroticism. How's that sound to tweak your character? That's great. So the drinking song is him articulating that in a podcast to the beat of a drinking song, with the video of Pinocchio getting drunk as he's on his journey to become a real boy and just like getting shit faced. There's a whole scene in Pinocchio where he's drinking and smoking and stuff. And yeah, so this is what I was going to say. In addition to the speaking to alcohol, when you talk about going in with a certain expectation to a situation that's so meaningful for yourself and then getting an entirely different outcome, I would argue it's deeper than just within the context of your personal athletic aspirations. You're talking about your very mental map,
your identity,
navigate you feel me, like the structure with which you have built to navigate the world, giving you information that you're not expecting given the formula. So it's like you got a calculator that you've built your whole life, and now the numbers aren't coming back correct. You see, you have a menu for the restaurant that you're spent your whole life building, and now when you order said thing, a different item comes back. So what you're describing, I would argue, could shake a person to their psychological core, because you've gone in with a certain expectation for good reason, and now you're getting entirely different results. And to what do you attribute that? This is the thing that Peterson talks to, that's the cascade of negative emotion that can occur from trying to undertake that task. Okay, here's the most superficial level, right? Okay, maybe I just didn't, wax enough. I just got to wax my board better next time, right? Or maybe my edges just weren't quite sharp enough, right? You just say it, that's it, and everything else is off the table. But if you're a neurotic person like me, or an intelligent person, or whatever, somebody who thinks a lot, did I wax my board enough? Did I forget to wax my board? Am I forgetful? Have I not been putting enough energy towards this particular endeavor in my life? Am I not responsible? Am I not a responsible person? Am I not a good person? Am I a bad person?
Yep.
And that just goes like this. And that's the thing that not happens to just you, but anybody who has a way that they've been navigating the world all of a sudden get flipped on its head. So I hear where you're coming from, and it's fascinating to then now hear kind of what it did to you, how big of a loop it threw you for, let's say.
Yeah, it threw me for a huge loop. huge enough to kind of upend my entire experience. And so basically, like, part of what I shared through social media that you got to see was that I chose to get onto medication last summer. And that was
Yeah,
when
I think that's where I commented, didn't I? Is
Yeah, it
that
was.
fair? I think that's the okay. Okay, go ahead though. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So that was like sharing that was my way of just letting the world know that, hey, I'm still here. But we struggle with stuff too. And this is my first kind of invitation to the world just to say, here's where I'm at. Trying to meet life where it's at. And as much as I wish I could say that, everything's like fine and dandy, the ultimate truth of it is that this last season challenged me in such a way that, when I had a break in time, when I had a moment in time during my process of what it takes to snowboard really well, because I'm over in Europe pretty much for 6 months, and Europe was completely closed because of COVID. So ski resorts were closed except to professional athletes. Towns were completely shut down except for the supermarkets. People were instructed to stay home unless they were going out to get their food or go on a walk. And so
Right.
all of Europe was dead. I was not snowboarding well. And when I had that opportunity, when I said, like, oh, I'm going home for a week and a half for Christmas, I'm going to go tie one on before I go to the airport, before I get on my taxi ride to the airport, because I need that right now, because I am being shooken to my core.
Sure.
And so, like, that was a hard way to end the season, to end it after 6 months of trying and not getting any output of what I desired, of what I was looking for, of what I was working for. And at the end of the season, had a really, really detailed conversation with my coach, who loves me. He's one of my greatest friends. And that conversation was a SWOT analysis of how the season went. Just looking at everything at face value and saying, all right, here's where we're at. Here's where we're at with equipment. Here's where we're at mentally, emotionally, physically.
Sure.
And that whole conversation went well until the end of it, when kind of out of nowhere, surprisingly, because I'm an open book, especially to my coach, not to a ton of other people. Like, you're getting this story, but like, most people don't know this. And that's okay with me. And it's okay with me if they do know it. I hope that someone can learn something from it. If anything, I hope that people can learn from the place I'm in currently, which is watching pieces of my life kind of fall apart and seeing them and going, hey, I'm not okay with this happening. I don't want this to continue happening. And that all kind of started for me at the end of this season, when my coach and I did this analysis. He said, hey, I got something hard I need to share with you, but it's important, and I care about you a lot. If drinking is going to be any part of your life moving forward, I have no interest in working with you. You're an incredibly talented athlete. You can do whatever you want. You should put your mind towards it. And you need to address your problem with alcohol. And I said, holy shit. Okay. So that happened, and I was like, yeah, I really need to do some introspection here. I need to work on this. I need to figure this out. Which also involved drinking.
Let me drink while I think. Let me congratulate myself for being willing to take such an important decision into my mind with a nice cold beer. Yeah, I hear you.
And my brother who I looked up to, we've never really gotten along very well. We've always butted heads quite often, even though I've always wanted his approval, but we have a really weird relationship.
I get it.
So
My brother's
not
6
so
years
long
older.
after the thing with my coach happens, my brother and I get in a big verbal fight. And now my brother and I aren't talking. And I'm like, okay, do you see the writing on the wall, man? Like, your coach, your brother. And then I went to Costa Rica just like 2 weeks ago. Went to Costa Rica with my girlfriend. And then I went back to Colorado to spend a week with her, and came home single.
Oh, no.
So in the course of the last 6 weeks of trying to figure out, am I snowboarding or not, I've watched very important, meaningful relationships in my life start to take steps back from me. And I'm looking at this going, no.
Two questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you drinking?
Like today? No.
No, I mean just in general. Like, are you a drinker right now? Are you continuing to drink? Do you still have a desire to drink to excess in the future?
I really hope not.
Okay, fair enough. Number two, are you taking psychiatric medication currently?
I am.
How has it been going? Has it been working? Have you played with the dosages? Have you not had to because you found a therapeutic effect? Could you describe the effect if one exists?
For sure. No, yeah, the doses I guess I played with two of them, but I'm taking a cocktail of three separate SSRIs, select serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and basically for me, the psychiatric effect of the medicine is I'm insulated from what's occurring.
I hear you.
So like normally when something happens, or when I'm really excited about a snowboard run, or when I'm really excited about a lift that I just made or a PR I had, then I feel that and I'm like, oh man, this is life. This is exciting. This is cool.
Sure.
My experience on medication is I'm right here and everything that's happening outside of me is out there, and I'm insulated from it. It's not positive and negative. It doesn't affect me as much.
I hear you. Do you feel like a robot?
Yeah.
I felt like a robot. I've been on SSRIs. I've been on antipsychotics. I've been on benzos.
Yeah.
I've smoked a lot of pot. I, to this day, advocate for, interestingly enough, edible and tinctured cannabis if used in proper doses when it is appropriate, to be perfectly transparent. But I'm just fascinated with the experience of psychiatric medication because I've been there, done that, and it's really interesting to hear. So you're on 3 different SSRIs. Again, these are medications that are going to regulate the degree, the acceleration is not the right word, the rate at which a person can lose and then subsequently restabilize their serotonergic system. So things that upset the serotonergic system, and I'm very sensitive to serotonin flights, if you like, as a very neurotic person. One of the things that listening to Peterson has taught me is the 5 personality traits. Very fascinating to evaluate oneself on the big 5: conscientiousness, openness, extroversion, neuroticism, and the other one. In any case, the feeling of having those serotonergic intermediaries in my system were to, in the very same way that you describe it, I think it's a very consistent description of the effects of those medications, dull my experience, my direct experience. So I gained a lot of weight. It slowed down my metabolism. I'm only now at 35 years old, near as heavy as I was at, like, from a concerted effort of gaining muscle when I was like 21, 22 on psychiatric medication. So let me just finish my diatribe with what I thought was good about them, what I thought was bad about them, and then I'll give you a number C, letter C, where I'm hearing your experience is at with them. Number one, what was so great about SSRIs, and why I don't mean to be merely cynical about their usage in psychiatric pharmacology. Not that I'm a doctor. I'm working on becoming a paramedic, so at least take it from that perspective. I'm an intern currently. There are real self-destructive places that a person with mental struggles, if you like, can go. As a person who has had mental struggles, a person can become suicidal. I mean, let's just go to the nth degree. That's a very real threat to death. A
Totally.
very non-trivial percentage of specifically young males die from suicide. I mean, it's a very, very high percentage relative to other incidents of death. So
It's a huge concern.
you know what I'm saying? So this is not a non-issue that we're bringing up. So what utility do SSRIs serve? Well, they can stabilize a person's place in the herd cognitively, I would argue, enough that that person can find solid footing and continue to meaningfully move towards their chosen goal. The thing about the serotonin system is it's and this is all Peterson being regurgitated towards me, or through me rather. So full disclosure, clinical psychologist. If we think that we're here in society, we're good people, we were raised right, as you had said about your story, you know, I went to church, I have had great people in my life. Now I have this big trauma, and now I feel like I'm, you know, a bad person or whatever, right? So you're already having this thing that you've had from a very young age. Okay, now I'm a fucking world-class athlete. But, you know, I'm just a good, you know, down home guy, and I should just be a regular Joe. But I also have this other thing that's really weighed on me. And now I'm self-defeating because I'm drinking and I can't get over it. And I kind of feel embarrassed and ashamed and responsible. And so there's this huge serotonergic flux happening constantly. We're not talking about a dopaminergic flux or a adrenaline flux. Your adrenal systems are probably at the fucking highest percentage of acuity. You can handle a huge amount of adrenaline. I know what it's like to go fast on snow. It's not an easy thing. It's not a not scary thing. So it's fascinating, right? Because you have an amazing adrenal system. You probably have a great dopamine system, because when you feel good, you can ride it, right? You can channel that, because those incredible heights of getting a competitive advantage in real time, and you're riding that. That's a dopamine thing. But that serotonin is under a huge assault given the narrative that you described. So an SSRI can stabilize that. It takes you out of the driver's seat of that. It takes away the frontal lobe effect on the, you know, the deeper brain regulation of that. And that can be a lifesaver. Okay, that's the good part. The bad part is it's terrible, right? I mean, fuck, man, I've been there. I lost my libido. I gained a bunch of weight. I felt separated from my direct experience. I had that in both the abstract, like cognitively, like, yeah, I'm here and I'm just kind of am where I am, and ask me to care about it. I don't feel bad, but I'm not really attached to the profundity of the narrative of my magical life. And I've been on them and I've been off them. And that's my feeling. So that's those A, B, and C. So A, the utility for anybody that's considering using SSRIs in their life. Hey, man, one paramedic intern and fellow, you know, human's opinion. If you feel like, man, you're just on top of the world one instant, and the next instant you feel less than dog shit in terms of how you stack up to the next person, maybe having that level off it would be of utility. SSRIs can do that. Is that fair to say? Is that a realistic assessment of the positive aspect of SSRIs? It was in my experience. So I won't speak for you. But then the negative, of course, is, man, it can be really challenging with what you're describing now, because you need to shit or get off the pot, don't you? You need to make a decision if you're going to keep putting your efforts towards this goal that you've had for the last 8 years, and nobody can make you do that. You don't owe it to anybody. That's your choice. End of story. But also, what seems to be still on the table, you know, the gambling table, if you like, is this seemingly wonderful relationship with your coach. You know, I don't know the circumstances around your intimate relationship, but obviously that has happened in kind of with respect to, let's say, your being in limbo of the kind
life,
of grand of the grand narrative of your life, is what I was going to say. So I'll give the floor back to you, but those were my thoughts, both on the medication that you described using. I would be curious to know, like, the particular medications and what dosage and stuff. It's none of my business, but I've been on Paxil, I've been on Wellbutrin. Don't really know all the SSRIs that are out there, but in any case, that's my experience, my opinions, and then kind of my view of what you're telling me, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm on 20 milligrams of Lexapro, 15 milligrams of mirtazapine, and then the third one, I'm actually pretty sure isn't an SSRI. It's called Buspirone. And I think it's like 10 milligrams twice a day of that. But all three together, like really, they pretty drone me out. And the interesting part of being introspective during that is like being droned out, but then acknowledging like, oh, life's asking me to show up and do something right now, so I need to show up and do it. I need to show up as myself, and like really trying to like excite myself into showing up as Robby, because that whole spiel that you gave about, you know, feeling like a robot and being here and being like, yeah, I'm right here. That car could explode right over there, and I'd be like, dang, that car just exploded over there. I wouldn't be like, holy cow, I need to go save someone's life. I'd be like, yeah, that car just exploded. Or holy cow, you know, my girlfriend and I just broke up. Or holy cow, my coach just told me that he doesn't want to be my coach anymore if I don't change something about my life. And so like, I think for me, like the thing that's been really clear that um is also the most terrifying part of this for me is like I do feel like I'm in a really good spot to take advantage of where I'm at in life and um, use this tremendous low that I'm in, to create a trajectory for myself over the next 5 months that would put me in a place of success for the Olympics. And I've always been able to use my highs and my lows in a way to really help me. So like you go low and then you climb back out of where you're at. And I think where that whole narrative starts is with just completely eliminating alcohol from my life. And as challenging as that sounds, like to someone who struggles with it, because like I'm the first one to tell you, like I'm sitting right here, I struggle with it. I've been able to phase it out of my life for weeks and months, and sometimes for years, and then it comes back. It rears its ugly head. I go on a binge, and then it's back, and I'm like, oh well, yep, that's back. But not everything's bad. Um, what scares me about that whole narrative is like I feel like I can make good from this low that I'm in right now, from this tremendous sadness that I feel right now, which is partly self-induced. But I feel like I can make good on it, and I can work my way out of it and work hard and really get back to a place of healthy living. Not asking for anything else out of it other than healthy living. I'd really like just that. I'd like to feel really positive about life and really happy about it. And I believe I can get there. And that starts with not drinking and continuing to not drink, which is a process that I have to look at and attack one day at a time. Because if I try to think about not drinking for the next 20 years, it's like one of the most overwhelming thoughts. It's more overwhelming than if I try to think about going to the Olympics in 9 months.
Is that right? That's interesting to hear.
And like, cycles. I think about life in terms of cycles a lot. I think about the healthy cycles we're in, the unhealthy cycles we're taking part of, the ones that are happening mentally, emotionally, physically. I go through an ebb and flow physically every year because I work really hard over the course of the summer, get my body in excellent physical shape, and then I spend the winter on the road, and it's kind of like tearing my body down. It's like I don't get to be in a gym every day. I have to construct my own workouts based on what I have wherever I'm at. It might be raining. I might not have a treadmill. I got to figure out how to get my cardio in. I'm not eating the best food because I'm on the road and I'm eating whatever the hotel's making. So I don't get to choose to eat my green smoothie and all my things all winter long. So I go through 6 months of intense physical preparation so that I'm in good shape throughout a season of not a very good way of taking care of my body, because I don't have the access to the resources that would really help me to take care of my body in that way, because that's just another level of expense that I don't have that. I can't bring a chef with me. I can't bring all the food I need with me.
Are you
Um,
supplementing? I mean, do you have a good supplement regimen? Do you have
for
meal
sure.
replacements and things like this? I mean, obviously you'd have access to that and the knowledge and
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
right?
no, I have
But
protein shakes, I have meal
right.
replacement shakes, I have pills, I have supplements that
Yeah.
I'm taking daily. So I have all those things. But it really is like you take your body, you move it 9 hours ahead into a time zone,
Right.
and then you're eating a completely different diet in Europe than what we have in the United States.
Right.
Different oils, different fats, it's all different. So you're putting your body through a state of stress through travel
Sure.
for 6 months straight. So I usually weigh I'm 6'3". I usually weigh like 195 pounds when I start the season, and I come back and I weigh about 180. So I'm constantly losing because I would need to eat like 5,000, 5,500 calories a day to maintain my body weight based on my metabolism. Now that all
Sure.
changed when I started taking SSRIs.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was curious what you'd say about weight gain and maintenance on SSRIs.
I've gained just a little bit because I've maintained my active lifestyle. I'm still working out in the gym, not super aggressively, but I probably put on like between 2 and 5 pounds of like overall fat, I would say.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
And as an
and so
athlete, you're aware of your weight. I mean,
very,
a normie saying that, that's nothing. But you've competed at the highest level, so you're very cognizant of your weight gain and loss, I would argue.
for sure. So all that to say, I keep going back. I'm trying to explain this thought process about patterns is that like you have to change the entirety of the pattern, which doesn't all happen at once.
Hmm.
So you have a pattern, and this pattern might normally take place over 6 to 12 months. Over 9 to 12 months, I go from working out really hard and not consuming any alcohol to the start of my snowboard season where I'm really focused, really well prepared, in really good shape. And then all of a sudden, Christmas comes around, New Year's comes around, it's celebration, you're with your family. Oh, had something to drink. Okay, that changes the narrative a little bit. Where am I at in my unhealthy cycle with alcohol? Okay, I'm going
Sure.
back to snowboarding. I'm focused on that. Not going to drink for a while. Okay, snowboarding's not going so well. I've got a week-long break. I'm going to drink on the front end of that week to let off some steam. And then I'm going to go back to snowboarding. And so, like,
Yeah.
for me, it's not I'm not going to have a pint of alcohol in my back pocket and drinking every day. I'm not going to wake up in the morning and drink. But at the end of whatever my next preparation is, at the end of whatever it is, when I have the next celebration, when
Yeah.
I have the
I hear you.
wedding, I'm going to want to go and I'm going to blow some steam through drinking. And so, yeah, in the very, very essence of the description, I am a problem drinker.
Yeah, I hear you.
And like,
I mean, I have a question for you, but I don't want to take you off the train of thought because you're on to it right now.
well,
I'll hold it.
I'll be off it in just a second. But like, over the course of my life, given like all the experience I've been extremely blessed to have, the wisdom that I've gained through the experience, the self-awareness I've gained through it, still haven't been able to eliminate drinking from my life. Now, going into Alcoholics Anonymous meetings has taught me a couple of things. I have a shit ton in common with the people who go to those meetings
Sure.
because I am one. I'm an alcoholic. So I know when I walk into those meetings, I'm going to hear stories of people that I'm going to be like, oh man, that makes a lot of sense. I understand I know what you're saying. You're a 70-year-old woman and you're telling me a story from when you were 25. I did that. Like, I know, like, I'm here. And so you have talent and potential and life experience and struggle. And there's lots over here. There's lots to be thankful for. There's a tremendous blessing. I've been giving opportunities that people go their whole lives wanting. And I feel tremendously grateful for that. And I also have this other burden, and that's the weight of my alcoholism. And I'm sitting here watching my life going, okay, snowboard coach doesn't want to work with me. Brother and I are in a big fight. Girlfriend who I at one point for a very long time thought this was going to be the one who I got to spend my life with, and I was really excited about that. We break up. And while not all three of those were intrinsically tied to alcohol, it's a common denominator in all three.
Hmm.
And the common denominator that's coming out of alcohol being present is me struggling to live my life successfully. So I have a problem with that. Like, I have a big problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, why you should,
I don't want
you know.
those relationships to go by the wayside because I was too busy drinking about it.
Yeah, I hear you.
And the timing of all this is just crazy because I found out in the last week that I'll get all the points that I had from my successful finishes before COVID happened are going to be reinstated for everybody across the world for this next season because of the challenges that COVID
Sure.
gave all of us.
You've got to redo.
So I get a redo on last season. And it's both my job and my opportunity to shit or get off the pot.
Right. Yeah. I feel it.
Yeah. And so like I look at that and I take that very seriously, and I want to give my, every last ounce of motivation and inspiration and energy that I have to go in and fighting for this thing that I've wanted to fight for the last 20 years. I want to do that, and I want to show everybody that it's possible that you don't have to live under the guise of whatever the thing is that's controlling or running your life. That, if you struggle with alcohol, or if you struggle with pot or cocaine or whatever it is, like, there are ways to walk away from it. And I still have a hard time myself believing that because I haven't been able to do it yet completely. But I would like to be a testament to that. I'd like to show people like, hey, you can actually do this. You can actually walk away from the thing that's killing you, that's kicking your ass, do the thing you love, or whatever it is. But you can do it. And like, yeah, that's
Heavy, dude.
what's real.
Yeah, I feel it. There's a lot there, It's like, yeah, you can, but like, are you going to? Like, do you want it? Like, are you willing? Like, I know you can do your next, push-up workout, but like, are you going to? Like, are you going to do it on time? Are you going to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't mean to just digress into saying like 100 times, but I just trip over the thought because it's such a profound one. It's so easy to articulate our understanding of the world around us. It's so much more difficult to act on it correctly. One exists in abstraction, one's theory, and the other's practice. In theory, practice and theory are the same thing. I always love that because it's like, yeah, that's right. Like, go do it. I went through a real crazy time in my life years ago, and like, I as much as I'd love to take you through kind of my whole journey, I just kind of want to give you a pearl from it. And I even am kind of losing my train of thought, but all I got to think too is we're saying, hi Sage is looking at me, that you're articulating your awareness of the issue at hand and are aware of the fact that it's capable, you're capable of overcoming it. And at the very same time, the experience of that is an entirely different notion. Like, so I struggled a lot growing up with the idea that what we think we know is all there is. And I've had my share of trauma and difficulty, interpersonal adversity, family dynamics that were less than ideal. And it was only after you talk about cycles, that really resonated with me. It was only, I actually forgot exactly why I brought this shit up, but I'm going to tell you this quick kind of story about it anyway. It was only after going on a kind of walkabout psychologically where I had I lost really the first love of my life. I had really bad relationships. I was fighting with my parents and the people around me. And I was going crazy intentionally, if that makes any sense.
Totally does.
And the thing that stabilized me was the ocean. I was in Santa Cruz at the time. I took me 8 years to get my bachelor's, and I stayed there for I think 10 overall, and then before moving to Tahoe. But I find that was the first time in my life where I was able to transcend my mental map. It was the first time in my life where I was, and I mean, you could argue, okay, kids are, lucid and they're taking it really in, and before they're, tainted by society, they're the wisest among us. I don't know if I buy that argument that much anymore as I get older, but let's just say it was the first time in my life where I went into the deep end of my psychology, of my emotional self. You're off at college, you have a measure of freedom. I'm living in my own apartments. I'm taking I was never a good alcoholic. I drank to excess several times in my college days, but smoking was always my demon. My grandmother died of emphysema. We're smokers in our family. And it took me a long time to come to a healthy relationship with cannabis. It took me a long time. And during the course of that time, a decade, from really 21 to 34, maybe I'm 35 now, or I'm almost 35 now. I'm bringing it pretty up to the present. Was the thing that got me through it was coming back to a stable base, a place where only I existed, a place where all of my trauma could be understood and explained away, even though that's not the right verbiage to use. I think you get what I'm trying to say. Where I could deconstruct my demons, where I could be in front of adversity, and there was nothing animating me that I had to contend with except myself. And I found that place in the darkest of dark holes inside myself. I found that place, and that place allowed me to start walking back up toward the light. And it was after getting off of all of the substances. It was after telling everybody that I had to tell my truth to doing so. And bro, it just, and then it was the orienting my entire life around a decision based on pursuing my passions, skiing. I kept doing like vision, you listen to anybody competent in psychology enough when the question you're asking, which was the question that I was asking to the Google, and everything else was, how do I fucking get on the right track? How do I find purpose? How do I find the meaning? How do I build a good life? I'd been in jobs where I made shitloads of money. It didn't turn me on, man. Truth be told, I was a salesperson. I W-2'd $93,000 in the third year of doing technical recruiting. Saw the guy that was sitting in the bigger desk than me. Didn't want to be him. I look at Laird Hamilton. I look at you. I look at people that are climbing, Jeremy Jones. I look at, what I mean? I look at Jordan Peterson. There's a lot of people that I do want to be like. I didn't want to be like those guys. So I made a decision in that direction. I'm going to move to Tahoe. I don't give a shit. I don't care that nothing makes sense, that I'm incredibly cynical, that I recognize that creates an incredible divergence of cognitive dissonance, that everything's super fucked in the world, and my liberal upbringing, it tells me to hate every institution and look at all this corruption. And the only thing that makes me want to get up in the morning is recognizing that the most important thing for me to focus on is to get my shit together. It's for me to realize how to be a contributing member of society and altruism and honesty individually. Devin, don't think about any other person before you figure your own fucking shit out. And I had both of those voices fucking screaming at me. And the thing that gave me balance to find the lattice to bring those two extremely divergent views of the world into into crystallization was the ocean. I surfed, and I surfed a lot, and I got high and I would go surf. And I knew that I was killing myself smoking because I would roll spliffs, smoke them like a goddamn fiend. If I would be rolling a spliff, and before I took the first puff of that spliff, I was thinking about rolling the next spliff. That was the thing that I was focused on, you know, with like your complex motion sensor is how am I going to roll the crutch so it just, you know, I'm a pothead. I'm not an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic. I'm a pothead.
Yeah.
I have a problem with weed. If you give me an eighth, I'm going to smoke that eighth. You're not going to have an eighth tomorrow. Like it's gone, you know? And I recognize that. I probably throw in the microphone all over. I recognize that about myself. Just like you seem to be recognizing things about yourself and your relationship with alcohol. And as soon as you recognize it, as soon as you're aware of it, if you're an athlete, if you're a hunter, if you're a goal-directed individual at your core, and you are, obviously, I would argue, I certainly am, you can't help but target that sumbitch and study it and learn about it and understand its relationship to you and understand its power over you and deepen the conversation with it. And if you do that, you're going to be faced with the truth about your life and your behavior. And that's some shit, you know, for all of us. And it sounds like you're doing that. So more power to you. And, you know, it's the same shit that like the Goggins and Willick and the rest of the military guys say is embrace the suck I mean, my take on it. It's like the harder the work, the more important it is. You feel me? Like in terms of that intrapsychic stuff. And I mean that from like a psychological, you know, a strictly scientifically psychological place. You do that work, your serotonin's going to level out. You do that work, you're going to get in better physical condition. Why? Because you're going to be integrated psychologically more fully into your physiology. And, you know, that's nothing to speak of the wild tangents I could take in this topic about, you know, spirituality and an emotional self and higher self, just to speak to the strictly biologically pharmacological, you know.
That'll have to wait until the next.
Yeah. Right. I don't think we have anything to talk to there yet. You've got work to do, bro, is what it sounds like. I mean, just being real with you, like coming from a married mother of a 2-year-old with a dog, you know, and fucking bills to pay, like you got work to do. And God bless you and more power to you. And, you know, many hands make light work. So good on you for being willing to speak about it, because I think that that's the way you do it is you get other opinions, you get other input, then you say to hell with all that and you make up your own mind and you soldier forward, man, and you do the best you can and you lay a fucking brick a day or whatever, you know, you take a step each day and you do it honestly and you don't do it with any other motivations than the true ones of your heart and soul animating you, and then you face the consequences of that, you know, and you know, fucking A, more power to you.
Awesome, Devin. Well, this has been sweet.
Hey, thank you so much for talking with me. It's really a pleasure to be able to talk story with somebody who is so open, is so gracious, is obviously so with such tremendous fortitude to bring to bear your experience as a professional athlete and to do so in a vulnerable and hopefully helpful way to the people listening to this. So God love you, man. That was super fun. So I hope we could do it again, and you take care of yourself, and then let's have another conversation when you have something to tell me. Is that reasonable?
I'm looking forward to it.
Right on, man. Good deal. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
You, Devin.